He is the owner of twin martial souls, possessing the top-notch golden heart essence martial soul. He has the ability to automatically cultivate martial souls, and he has unparalleled talent as a soul mentor. Shrek College wouldn't have thought that when Jiang Ming entered Shrek as a new student, the gears of fate had already begun to turn. In just one grade, he flipped through the entire outer courtyard and was awarded the title of the Great Demon King of the Outer Courtyard. In 3 years, we will conquer the inner courtyard invincible and suppress our peers. In 5 years, Shrek College has been challenged by him to lead students and teachers over and over again. Countless Shrek people lament. Who let him enter Shrek? Shuangwen, do not enter if you do not like it. Keywords of the novel. Douluo Peerless. Who let him enter Shrek? No pop-ups, Douluo is unparalleled. Who let him enter Shrek? Download the complete TXT collection, Douluo is peerless. Who let him enter Shrek? Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. He just doesn't need to dismantle Shrek. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. He just doesn't need to dismantle Shrek. Douluo Continent, Heavenly Soul Empire, Qingshui City. Xiao Ming, Shrek Academy is the best advanced soul master academy on Douluo Continent. You must study hard there. Have you enough money with you? Are you carrying all the storage and soul guides with you? Are you carrying all your clothes? Is there enough food and water? At the entrance of the Lord's mansion, a beautiful woman in her 40s was holding Jiang Ming's hand and pleading with concern on her face. Jiang Ming smiled and followed the instructions of the beautiful woman to check the contents of the soul guide, even though he had checked it last night. On the side, Nye Heng, the lord of Qingshui City, looked helpless. You've been asking this question 30 times since waking up in the morning. If you keep dragging on, it'll be noon. The beautiful woman, upon hearing her husband's words, glared at him angrily and said angrily. Xiao Ming is going to Shrek College. It's thousands of miles away from our Qingshui City, and you don't allow me to talk to Xiao Ming too much. You. Nye Heng had no choice but to stand aside and instruct the driver to be more stable while driving to his wife. And the beautiful woman, after instructing Jiang Ming about some things and secretly stuffing a bag of gold soul coins into Jiang Ming, finally sent him on to the carriage in tears. Their Qingshui City belongs to the edge cities of the Heavenly Soul Empire, without advanced soul guides like the core cities of the mainland. Carriages are the best means of transportation. I don't know if this child can get used to living at Shrek College. I heard that the assessment system at Shrek College is very strict. The carriage that Jiang Ming was riding had not yet traveled far, and the beautiful woman began to worry about Jiang Ming's future. Upon hearing these words, Nye Heng's mouth twitched slightly, and he looked helplessly at the carriage that was going away. Don't worry, if Xiao Ming's talent doesn't allow him to stay at Shrek Academy, then no one in the Douluo continent really has this qualification. I just hope he doesn't demolish Shrek Academy. That place is not Qingshui City. Even if he sells the Lord's mansion, he can't afford it on the carriage. Jiang Ming was filled with reluctance and anticipation in his heart, with sadness and excitement on his face, imagining what Shrek College would look like in 10,000 years. Yes, Jiang Ming is a traveler. 12 years ago, with a earth-shattering cry, he arrived in the world of Douluo continent. At first, he was a bit confused. After all, he had just finished the college entrance examination before crossing over. He was already ready to be a failed student in the Qing dynasty, but at night, while hanging up at home and playing 43.99 while reading a novel, a fully loaded mud truck rushed into his house and immediately crushed him to death. All of this was so sudden that in the first few months of travel, people were all confused. After crossing over, his background also carries some stories. Jiang Ming's parents are people of the Heavenly Soul Empire, to be precise, soldiers of the Heavenly Soul Empire. 11 years ago, Jiang Ming's parents sacrificed themselves in a war between the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Sun Moon Empire. At that time, Nye Heng, who was a comrade in arms of Jiang Ming's father, raised Jiang Ming. Afterwards, Heng was sent to Qingshui City as the city lord due to his military achievements. Due to Heng's wife's early injuries, they have never had any children. They have always treated Jiang Ming as their own biological son. And this time, the first advanced Soul Master College in mainland China, Shrek College, is recruiting students, and Heng, as the lord of Qingshui City, has a recommended spot. Coincidentally, Jiang Ming was already old enough, so I directly recommended him. Master, please drive steadily. I need to get something in the car. On the way to Shrek Academy, Jiang Ming poked his head out of the carriage and gave a warning to the coachman, while a silver soul coin quietly slipped into his hand. The silver soul coin was purchased, and the driver's eyes lit up instantly. Don't worry, Master Jiang. My car has been modified and specially equipped with soul guides and shock absorbers. With my driving skills, even if you're inside, it won't have any impact. The coachman patted his chest and assured him. However, as soon as he spoke, he felt something was wrong. Master Jiang, I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing, so just pretend you didn't hear me. The coachman smiled awkwardly. The person in front of me is from the Lord's mansion, only 12 years old. He is not the kind of rough guy he usually carries, so we cannot say such vulgar things. It's okay, just drive steadily. In the carriage, Jiang Ming paid no attention to the coachman's words and brushed his palm over the storage ring and soul guide on his finger, as well as the storage soul guide on his waist. He took out a book and small pieces of metal with a metallic luster. Although he is now 12 years old, his mind is still an adult, and compared to the vulgar words on the internet in his past life, the carriage driver's words are nothing but minor and can't make any waves in his heart. It seems that the energy flow here can be further optimized. Jiang Ming picked up a metal block, frowned slightly, and scanned the patterns carved on the metal block with his eyes, thinking about an optimization plan in his mind. After reading for a few seconds, Jiang Ming picked up one of the books from the stack next to him and flipped through it. At first glance, half an hour has passed. Jiang Ming closed the book and a sudden realization expression appeared on his face. So it's like this. Oh, why didn't I expect it? Jiang Ming tapped his little head with some self-blame, put down his book, and brushed his finger over a gemstone of the soul guide at his waist. A thin, pale golden knife appeared in his hand. Immediately after, Jiang Ming tightly grasped the slender knife and carved it on the metal block. Jiang Ming's hands are very stable, and the powerful force on his arms allows him to easily carve the patterns he wants on metal blocks with a small knife. The coachman didn't lie. I don't know if it was the soul-guided shock absorber he installed that had an effect or if his driving skills were really impressive. There were few vibrations during the carriage's movement, at least not any impact on Jiang Ming. Time passed by bit, and without realizing it, Jiang Ming was completely immersed in the state of carving the soul guide array. Except for sometimes encountering difficulties and stopping to think or read, Jiang Ming almost always carves patterns on these metal blocks. Over the past decade of traveling through this world, Jiang Ming has had three greatest hobbies, and studying soul guides is one of them. Perhaps because he had just finished the college entrance examination in his previous life, his passion for learning still lingered to some extent, and when Jiang Ming first came into contact with the technical work of soul guides, he fell in love with it. And he really has a talent for soul guides. At least in Qingshui City, no one has a stronger talent in soul guides than him. Even his 4th-level soul mentor's master said he couldn't teach him anything anymore. In the study of soul guides, Jiang Ming particularly enjoys studying things like firearms and shells. You should know that Douluo world is not a past life. Between soul masters, or between soul masters, battle is the main melody. To engage in battle with a soul gun or soul shell, for a passionate boy, it's simply Thai pants spicy. Finally, Jiang Ming has completed the characterization of the core components of a soul guide again. Looking at the metal block in his hand, Jiang Ming smiled and slowly injected soul power into it. At the next moment, Jiang Ming's smile froze instantly, and he quickly opened the car window, throwing the metal block in his hand out without hesitation. In a few seconds, boom. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Explosion again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Explosion again. Two strong horses let out a long hiss, their thick hind legs stood straight, their forelimbs lifted their entire upper half of their height, and they ran wildly forward. The speed is so fast that even the car body equipped with shock absorption system keeps shaking, and Jiang Ming inside the car is like riding a roller coaster, unable to stop at all. Jiang, Master Jiang, please sit still. The horse is frightened, I need to quickly stabilize it, maybe I won't be able to take care of you anymore. The coachman shouted loudly, afraid that Jiang Ming inside the car wouldn't hear him. This young master is the young lord of Qingshui City, so nothing can happen. Inside the carriage, there was an empty space, and the books and metal blocks that had originally covered the entire carriage were immediately stored in the Soul Guide by Jiang Ming in case of an accident. Jiang Ming reached out to support the body of the carriage, and his strong physical strength allowed him to maintain stability in the bumpy body without tilting. However, Jiang Ming's gaze at this moment was full of contemplation and doubt. It shouldn't be. How could it be a mistake? Is what is said in the book wrong? Jiang Ming murmured softly, his sword eyebrows furrowed tightly under his forehead, his mind thinking of the metal block he had just carved. His handsome face was full of incomprehensible expressions. He was certain that he had drawn according to the pattern mentioned in the book, and his hands were definitely stable enough, so the probability of making a drawing mistake was extremely small. But why does this thing explode? It shouldn't be. It wasn't until the horse's emotions gradually calmed down under the driver's control, and the carriage gradually stabilized, that Jiang Ming realized the reason for the mistake that had just occurred. Perhaps the purity of the material is incorrect. The metal block he just carved may not have the same purity as the metal block written in the book. It is highly likely that this slight difference leads to deviations in the depiction of patterns. Try again. A glimmer of wisdom flashed in Jiang Ming's eyes, and then he took out another metal block, wanting to try again. Outside, the coachman who had finally stabilized the carriage breathed a sigh of relief and cautiously inquired through the curtain. Master Jiang, are you okay? After a while, the coachman didn't hear Jiang Ming's reply. He was suddenly startled and didn't want to disturb him, so he directly lifted the curtain. Master Jiang, you. As soon as the curtain was lifted, the driver's worried image was not seen. Jiang Ming was not knocked unconscious by the car's recent frequent vibration, but instead sat in the car, quietly holding a thin golden knife to carve on a metal block. Master Jiang, what are you doing? The coachman couldn't help but ask curiously. Jiang Ming did not directly respond, but finished the final stroke of the pattern before stopping. He lifted his head and looked at the coachman, with a satisfied smile on his face as he finished his work. I just researched the Soul Guide, I can't stop. I apologize for not responding. Research on Soul Guides. Mr. Jiang, are you still a soul mentor? The coachman was indeed surprised. You should know that since the development of soul guides, the status of soul mentors has also skyrocketed. Even the most basic level 1 soul mentor is considered a highly esteemed existence by ordinary people. Oh, I guess so. I played with it myself. Jiang Ming smiled and then reached out to point behind the coachman. Compared to this, I think it's better for you to pull the carriage back first. We have already deviated. The coachman was startled and quickly turned around to take a look. Sure enough, during the time he turned around to talk to Jiang Ming, the carriage had already deviated from the main road and was running wildly in another direction. The coachman quickly sat back in front of the carriage, pulled out his whip, whipped one side of the horse, and quickly corrected the direction of the carriage. Master Jiang, I didn't expect you to be a soul master. You're so amazing. What a genius. Perhaps it was because Jiang Ming gave a friendly impression that after correcting the direction of the carriage, the coachman began to converse with Jiang Ming without a word. After carving the metal blocks for such a long time, Jiang Ming also felt a bit tired. He lifted the curtain and sat next to the coachman, intending to take a break. Genius. There are so many geniuses going, and the Shrek Academy we're going to this time is filled with geniuses everywhere. Jiang Ming doesn't pay much attention to the word genius. There are too many geniuses in the world, and this word is too cheap. By the way, how long will it take for us to get to Shrek College? Jiang Ming turned his head and asked, feeling a bit impatient. He has knowledge about this Shrek College, but this knowledge is limited to Shrek College 10,000 years ago. Unexpectedly, 10,000 years later, Shrek College became the first college in the mainland. Master Jiang, we have only been walking for half a day now. Qingshui City is thousands of miles away from Shrek College, and we need to walk for at least 4 more days. The coachman smiled and said. 4 days. Upon hearing this moment, Jiang Ming narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the frame of the carriage, feeling lost in thought. 4 days should be enough for him to get that thing out, Jiang Ming thought, and unconsciously brushed his palm over the storage soul guide on his waist, took out the metal block that had just been carved, and injected soul power. With the injection of soul power, a light golden light rose on the metal block, about half a meter long. However, the light golden light seemed to be not very stable, appearing and disappearing, and the length of the light also fluctuated. Jiang Ming looked at the unstable light and frowned slowly again. The unstable light indicates that there are still some issues with the characterization of the core array of this metal block. But where did the problem arise? Jiang Ming looked left and right, unable to see any clues, and his mood couldn't help but become irritable. Suddenly, the soul power conveyed in Jiang Ming's hand accidentally increased a bit, and the metal block suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Not good. Jiang Ming muttered to himself that it was not good, and quickly threw out the metal block in his hand. Master Jiang, you throw it away. The coachman saw Jiang Ming throwing away the things in his hand and wanted to say something, so he heard a huge explosion sound in his ear again. His heart and liver trembled, and he quickly turned around to take a look. Next to the road they had just passed by, a huge pit quietly appeared, with several strands of lingering gunpowder smoke on top of it. This is. The coachman stabilized the frightened horse while stuttering at Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming looked a bit depressed and glanced at the coachman, muttering to himself. It exploded again. Is this thing so difficult? Again. The coachman immediately recalled the explosion incident and couldn't help but look back at the gradually receding crater, feeling palpitations. This power can already blow up his carriage and this person to pieces. Hey! Also, it has already exploded. Why is this young Master Jiang like a normal person? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Your path is quite wild. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Your path is quite wild. 4 days later, Jiang Ming and the coachman rode 2 strong horses respectively, gazing at Shrek College in the distance on a grand avenue. The coachman said, Mr. Jiang, here we are. Shrek City is ahead, and you can follow this road for a few dozen kilometers to reach Shrek Academy. The expression on the driver's face was very strange, as if he wanted to cry, but couldn't cry, as if he wanted to laugh, but couldn't either. The whole face looked very conflicted. Well, I see it, it's really spectacular. Jiang Ming looked at the magnificent building in the distance, breathing in the fresh oxygen exhaled by the surrounding vegetation through photosynthesis, his eyes filled with anticipation. Shrek Academy, what a sight is worth hearing. Mr. Jiang, since Shrek College has arrived, I'll leave first. The coachman looked at Jiang Ming with some caution and said softly. In just 4 days, Jiang Ming's image changed several times in his heart. From being kind at the beginning, to being the proud son of heaven later, to being crazy later, and now to being kind. Alas, it's hard to say in a single word. Ah. Are you leaving? Don't you come with me to Shrek City to see? Jiang Ming looked at the coachman in surprise. He had been chatting quite well with the coachman these days, thinking he would go shopping in Shrek City with him. No, there's something else on my end, we need to go back quickly. The coachman nervously waved his hands, with a very forced smile on his face. If you have something to do, then all right, you go back first. I'll go to Shrek College alone. As he spoke, Jiang Ming dismounted and handed the horse rope to the coachman, intending to walk over on his own. A few tens of kilometers away is not far, and with his foot strength, he arrived in just over an hour. The coachman, somewhat flattered, took the horse rope, exerted force on his legs, and turned around to leave. Oh, by the way, I accidentally bombed your carriage before. I'm sorry. Jiang Ming's apologetic voice echoed behind him, and the coachman instinctively turned around to take a look. Jiang Ming had already sprinted towards Shrek Academy, and a small bag slid in a beautiful arc in the air, landing steadily in the hand of the coachman. The coachman opened the bag and inside lay several golden soul coins quietly. He put away his small bag and looked at Jiang Ming rushing towards Shrek Academy, his expression somewhat complicated. They came by carriage before, but yesterday, when Jiang Ming was studying the Soul Guide, a small accident occurred and once again. Jiang Ming had a small accident while depicting a core magic formation. Without time to throw something out, Jiang Ming jumped out of the carriage and jumped out with the coachman. That's the core array of a level 4 Soul Guide. The power can be imagined, and their carriage instantly turned into nothing in an explosion. A very exciting experience, at least for the coachman, will never be forgotten in this lifetime. It was precisely because their carriage was bombed out that from yesterday until today, both of them arrived here riding the only 2 horses left on the carriage. Good luck to you. The coachman silently blessed Jiang Ming from the bottom of his heart, and then left without looking back. Even with compensation, he doesn't want to continue staying with Jiang Ming. After all, no one knows if the next explosion will also destroy him. On the main road outside Shrek City, Jiang Ming ran at full speed, leaving shallow marks on the solid road surface. Ha 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 ha. Under high-intensity running, Jiang Ming's breathing is not urgent or slow, very regular. The distance between the shallow marks under his feet also seemed to be measured, with identical intervals. The journey of dozens of miles is not long, but for a 12-year-old boy, the pressure is also considerable. However, there is no pressure on Jiang Ming at all. He has a martial soul that is specifically designed to strengthen his physical fitness. In addition, Qingshui City is already a city on the edge of the empire. In order to defend himself, Hengs taught him to exercise his body from a young age. Not to mention this kind of light running, even wearing an iron coat, he is still effortless. Wow, there are so many people signing up for Shrek. Jiang Ming sighed inwardly as he ran. He ran along the roadside, almost at the same speed as the carriages on the road, without any difficulty. The people passing by the carriage were all exploring the window curiously and looking at Jiang Ming. Seeing that he was a young boy like himself, he was immediately surprised. A luxurious carriage decorated with ice and snow patterns passed by Jiang Ming's side. A girl resembling a porcelain doll peeked out from inside, casting a curious gaze at Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming felt the girl's gaze, tilted his head slightly, and smiled. His smile is like sunshine, giving people a very warm feeling. Seeing Jiang Mingchong laughing at herself, Ling Luochen was stunned. A blush appeared on her fair and delicate face, as if she was a bit shy. She withdrew into the carriage, her small head filled with Jiang Ming's smile. She has seen handsome guys before, but it's the first time she has seen someone as handsome as Jiang Ming. And, for some reason, when she saw Jiang Ming, she felt her heart beating much faster. It's that strange feeling, a bit out of control. The journey of several tens of miles was not long, and Jiang Ming quickly arrived at the east gate of Shrek City. Before coming, Hengs had already inquired about it for him. He saw Shrek City, walked through the East Gate, entered Shrek College from there, and then went to the freshman teaching building to register. The process is very simple, similar to when he registered at school in his previous life. Quickly, guided by the college students at the entrance, Jiang Ming entered Shrek College. After entering Shrek Academy, Jiang Ming walked straight towards the location of the Soul Guidance Department. On the way here, several core arrays in his 4th-level soul-guided shells kept having problems, even though they have not been resolved yet. Shrek College, as the first college in the mainland, is only a level 4 soul guide. It should be possible to find any teacher or senior to answer his doubts. With a desire to learn, Jiang Ming walked towards the gray teaching building on the side of the Soul Guidance Department. There are only 3 or 2 people, a few tables, a few chairs, and 2 men, 2 women, and 4 others sitting downstairs in the new teaching building of the Soul Guidance Department, responsible for registering and distributing dormitory keys and school uniforms. Jiang Ming walked over with a smile on his face, his palm touching the storage ring at his waist, and a golden soul coin appeared in his hand. "Hello. Are you here to register? Come on, fill out the registration form first, Jasmine, get a set of school uniforms for you." A senior wearing a yellow school uniform smiled and took out a registration form, looking very happy. "Well, I'm not here to register. I chose the Martial Soul Department. I came here to ask senior students some questions about soul guides, which have been bothering me for several days." Jiang Ming explained his purpose and then without a trace, put the golden soul coin in his hand into the senior's hand. Ah! For 3rd grade senior students from the Soul Guidance Department are all confused and want to register for the Martial Soul Department, but they come here to ask questions from the Soul Guidance Department. Although the rule at Shrek Academy is to choose the Martial Soul and Soul Guidance Departments only after 3rd grade, it is still possible to choose the Soul Guidance Department from the beginning. Before 3rd grade, this was a very free thing. But as long as after 3rd grade, it is necessary to clarify the direction of cultivation. The senior who received Jiang Ming's golden soul coin looked at the coin in his hand with disbelief, and his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He looked at Jiang Ming with a strange expression. "Little brother, why don't you report to the Soul Guidance Department of the Martial Soul Department and ask questions? Your approach is quite wild." End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Grandpa, are you very powerful? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4, Grandpa, are you very powerful? Under the benevolent gaze of the senior in the Soul Guidance Department, Jiang Ming still bravely took out the metal block he had been studying for several days. There's no way, he's just too curious. On his way to Shrek College, he solved some problems himself, but there were still some details that he didn't understand. And on the books, those reference books are useful, but they can only solve some of the problems. The senior of the Soul Guidance Department frowned and glanced at the metal block placed by Jiang Ming on the table, suppressing the desire to hit someone and observing the patterns on it. At first glance, I took out this simple pattern and asked if it was something that would happen after reading a book. Second glance, there's something in this pattern. At the 3rd glance, the senior's eyebrows furrowed so much that they almost met, and his gaze gradually became solemn. He carefully picked up the metal block from the table and scrutinized it carefully. After a few minutes, he shook his head and looked at Jiang Ming with a hint of impatience in his eyes. I said, "Little brother, you're really here to entertain us. Take a core magic array of a level 4 soul guide and ask us, thank you for looking up to us." The senior slapped the metal block back into Jiang Ming's hand. "Go ahead and report back to your Martial Soul Department. If it's too late, you'll have to queue up in a long queue." Speaking, the senior waved his hand and urged Jiang Ming to leave quickly. Just kidding, level 4 soul guide. They are the 2nd and 3rd grade students of the Soul Guidance Department, and being able to get a level 3 soul guidance tool is already extremely challenging. A level 4 soul guidance tool is just as difficult as a soul sect in the Martial Soul Department. If nothing unexpected happens to the soul sect, they can all graduate from the outer courtyard. If they can understand the core array of the 4th level Soul Guide and still receive new students to register here. Isn't it fragrant to just prepare to go to the inner courtyard? Jiang Ming blinked when he heard the senior's words, but he understood that these senior students couldn't solve his own problems. But, it's just a level 4 Soul Guide, this is Shrek Academy. Jiang Ming was somewhat disappointed. He thought this place could solve his doubts, but now it seems that he should register with the Martial Soul Department first and focus on the main task before proceeding. With this in mind, Jiang Ming glanced at the Grey Soul Guidance Teaching Building not far away, noted its location, and planned to come and listen when he had time in the future. Students don't know, teachers definitely do. Take 2 courses at 1 tuition fee, earn money. After Jiang Ming left, the 3rd grade senior who had just been hit by Jiang Ming continued to register the elementary school students who came to the Soul Guidance Department. After registering a new student, distributing their school uniform and dormitory keys, a few people became idle again. Alas, Brother Xian, did you say that the person from the Martial Soul Department just now really become a level 4 Soul Master? With nothing to do, a few people brought up the recent incident to discuss. Just as soon as these words were spoken, the other 3 people all looked at the speaker with idiotic eyes. Don't you, as a soul guide, know what a level 4 soul mentor is? That's a 12-year-old freshman. A level 4 soul mentor. There shouldn't be such a genius in the Sun and Moon Empire. The person known as Xian Gu is somewhat speechless. If this person really has this level of soul weapon talent, how could he possibly register for the Martial Soul Department? Is it difficult? His talent in martial soul should even surpass that in soul weapons. That's even more nonsense. On the other hand, Jiang Ming has arrived at the lower floor of the new student teaching building in the Martial Soul Department. The teaching building in the Martial Soul Department is more colorful than that in the Soul Guidance Department, with 4 colors. White, yellow, purple, and black. Among them, the white teaching building is the new student teaching building. When Jiang Ming arrived at the registration office, some people had already started registering. Fortunately, Jiang Ming didn't spend much time in the Soul Guidance Department, so he didn't queue for long and quickly received his school uniform and dormitory keys. At the reminder of the registered senior, Jiang Ming learned that the dormitory building was located behind the teaching building, not far away. He walked towards the dormitory building, only to see a notice board not far away, with several notices posted on it. Out of curiosity, Jiang Ming leaned over to take a look. The announcement above states the homeroom teacher for each class. I am Zhou Yi, the homeroom teacher of Class 1. Jiang Ming silently took note of the name and then continued walking towards the dormitory building. He doesn't really care who his homeroom teacher is, he's not familiar with them anyway, just follow the arrangements. In no time, Jiang Ming walked to the downstairs of the dormitory. This dormitory building looks a bit fancy. It is a 6-story building, painted in 4 different colors, and arranged with 4 doors, which are also 4 colors. Each color represents the place where students of different grades live. Well, it's easy to understand. Jiang Ming is a new student, and his dormitory is located in the white area. Walking to the entrance of the white building, Jiang Ming saw an elderly man. He was wearing a cloth jacket, with wrinkles on his face and half-closed eyes, lying on a chair enjoying the sunlight shining through the buildings. Is this the dormitory management? Jiang Ming's eyes lit up and he ran 2 steps to the old man's side, looking at the dormitory manager. This is too old, isn't it? Jiang Ming frowned and expressed great incomprehension towards the behavior of Shrek College, which made elderly people who were in the twilight years serve as dormitory managers. Although the dormitory manager of his previous school was also an old man, he was also an old man in his 60s and 70s, which can be considered as a middle-aged man among the old men. Jiang Ming is really afraid that this old man might accidentally lie down like this and pass away. Mr. Dormitory Manager. Jiang Ming whispered, unsure if the old man had fallen asleep. The old man seemed to have heard it, and his half-closed eyes slowly opened to look at Jiang Ming beside him. Jiang Ming instinctively looked into the eyes of the dormitory master, not knowing if it was an illusion. He felt that at the moment he saw the eyes of the dormitory master, it was like seeing an ocean full of the power of light. The vastness almost engulfed his spirit. But in the blink of an eye, the eyes of the dormitory manager became dim again, looking like what a frail old grandfather should have looked like. Is it a hallucination? Jiang Ming looked carefully a few more times, but the eyes of the dormitory manager were still so dim, carrying the vicissitudes of life. Is there anything else? The dormitory manager spoke, his voice sounding a bit hoarse and low. Oh, Mr. Dormitory Manager, I'm a new student. Do I need to register here? When I first went to the dormitory building in my past life, I had to register with the dormitory management. No need, show me your dormitory key and badge. The dormitory manager slowly reached out his hand, and Jiang Ming quickly placed the dormitory key and badge in his thin palm. Meanwhile, Jiang Ming was also constantly scrutinizing the dormitory manager. He doesn't believe that the scene just now was an illusion. He is in good health, with strong qi and blood, and sensitive 5 senses. The possibility of sudden hallucinations is too low. But this dormitory manager really looks very normal. Jiang Ming frowned, narrowed his eyes, and tentatively asked. Old man, are you very powerful? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. I don't want to fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. I don't want to fight. The withered palm of the dormitory manager's hand slightly froze, and a hint of surprise flashed in his cloudy and dim eyes. He glanced at the key and badge in his hand and returned them to Jiang Ming. Why do you think so? The dormitory manager didn't give a direct answer, but instead asked Jiang Ming why he thought so. Jiang Ming smiled, he already had the answer in his heart. The dormitory manager, this is Shrek College. Being able to stay at Shrek College for retirement, someone like you at your age should also be a titled Douluo, right? Upon hearing these words, the old man in charge of the dormitory flashed a hint of smile on his face. The moving muscles on his face stacked several layers of wrinkles together, and he estimated that he could strangle several flies. New students nowadays have a lively mind. Alright, your room is on the second left side of the second floor. Remember, starting from the 4th floor is where girls live, and going up there will result in dismissal. The dormitory manager reminded me. Okay. Thank you, the dormitory manager. I'll come back and chat with you later. Jiang Ming held the dormitory key and badge in his palm and turned into the white dormitory building. Mr. Su Guan shook his head, his hazy eyes still aged, but a hint of brilliance flickered in the depths of his eyes. Interesting child. Following the instructions of the dormitory manager, Jiang Ming quickly found his dormitory. To be reasonable, the environment is not very good. The dormitory building has clearly existed for a long time, with some outdated interiors and collective bathrooms on both sides of the corridor. The door sign hanging on the dormitory door has some rust, indicating that it has been in service for a long time. Jiang Ming thought for a moment, inserted the key into the door hole, turned it open, and then quickly retreated 2 steps to avoid the long accumulated turbid air. The new dormitories are indeed like this, and there is no difference from the dormitories in previous lives. After dispersing the air for a while, Jiang Ming walked into the dormitory and opened the windows inside. A thick layer of dust has accumulated in the dormitory, and there is a clear shoe print on the floor, making Jiang Ming feel helpless. Looking at the surroundings, Jiang Ming gently closed his eyes and activated his soul power to activate his martial soul. 1 yellow, 2 purple, a total of 3 soul rings. At the age of only 12, Jiang Ming has actually reached the realm of the 3rd ring Soul Lord. Moreover, the 2nd soul ring is still a purple Millennium Soul Ring. This is also an absolute top genius in Shrek College, where talents gather. However, as the soul ring appeared, Jiang Ming's martial soul disappeared without a trace. It had neither the characteristics of a beast martial soul nor the appearance of a weapon martial soul. Some of them were just the heartbeat quietly ringing in the dormitory. The sound of heart beating is loud, several times louder than normal heartbeat. And with the constant heartbeat, the dust in the entire dormitory began to vibrate slightly. Dust particles jump up and down with the frequency of the heartbeat, like crazy men and women in a disco. The scene is very dynamic. My heart was beating faster and faster, and the dust in the entire dormitory shook. They gathered in front of Jiang Ming at a dynamic pace, forming a super-sized leg-stretching eyeball. There's still a smell. Jiang Ming wrinkled his nose. Although the dust in the room had already been piled up under his feet, the smell still needed to be removed. This job can only be handed over to the northwest wind outside the window. It's really nice to be able to drink and work. It takes time for the odor to dissipate, so Jiang Ming took out some daily necessities from the storage soul guide at his waist and arranged them one by one. After finishing everything, Jiang Ming left the dormitory directly. The dormitory manager downstairs is still lying on a chair, with the sun shining on his old face, with a feeling of yellow hair drooping in contentment. Jiang Ming walked to the side of the dormitory manager and wiped his finger on the soul guide at his waist. A lounge chair appeared next to the dormitory manager. Jiang Ming lay down leisurely, competing with the dormitory manager for the sunlight that finally seeped through the buildings. It should be said that lying down is indeed more comfortable than standing or sitting. Lying in a lounge chair, holding a book, and absorbing knowledge through rhythmic shaking is indeed quite enjoyable. The dormitory manager next to him clearly noticed Jiang Ming's actions, but he didn't say much and generously shared the sunshine with Jiang Ming beside him. Jiang Ming held a book with the basic structure of soul-guided shells and the core array design of special soul-guided shells. He looked at it with relish, sometimes frowning slightly, and sometimes the corner of his mouth slightly curling. Time is quiet, and time passes quickly without realizing it. During Jiang Ming's time reading, the new students who came to the dormitory building didn't have a good eye. They went straight into the dormitory building without saying hello to the low-key sweeping monk. Alas, young people are not on the road. Anyone who has read a novel should not be ignorant of this hidden rule. After reading for a while, Jiang Ming felt a bit thirsty. With a wave of his hand, a folding table appeared next to him. Subsequently, Jiang Ming took out an ice blue fruit that looked like a watermelon, with crystal clear frost patterns on its oval shape, resembling a work of art. A cold light flashed by, and the fruit was cut into 16 even pieces. The flesh was light blue and clear like the sky. Master Su Guan, here, have a melon. Jiang Ming took out 2 slices of melon and handed over one. The dormitory manager in his sleep slowly lifted his eyelids when he heard Jiang Ming's voice. This is a new variety I have cultivated myself, the ice melon, it's very sweet. Jiang Ming directly placed the melon in the hands of the dormitory manager and started eating it with a smile. The dormitory manager glanced at the melon in his hand and then at Jiang Ming, who was enjoying eating melons by his side, with a kind smile on his face. Well, this melon is indeed sweet. It's icy and cool, but it doesn't freeze your teeth. It's full of juice, good melon. The elderly and the young are eating melons under the maple tree downstairs in the dormitory, looking very relaxed. Mr. Su Guan, isn't it very delicious? Do you want another slice? Jiang Ming finished nibbling on a piece of watermelon, shook his wrist, and the remaining watermelon peel formed a beautiful parabolic shape and entered the nearby trash can. The dormitory manager remained silent and reached out his hand. Jiang Ming grinned and took 2 more slices of melon. The old and the young started eating the melon again. The elderly and the young are eating melons downstairs in the dormitory, and whether they eat this new variety or not is somewhat eye-catching. Well, Jiang Ming had just finished his second piece of melon, and the melon skin in his hand had not been thrown away yet. A very strong and seemingly new student stood in front of Jiang Ming. Hey, give me a slice of melon too. This guy seems to be used to being arrogant and domineering, speaking with high tones and a strong aura, as if giving orders to others. Jiang Ming ignored him, shook his wrist again, threw the melon skin into the trash can, and then looked at the burly guy in front of him with calm eyes. Today, as a new student, I don't want to fight. Give you 3 seconds and leave my sight. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Keep a low profile when going out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Keep a low profile when going out. Jiang Ming's calm gaze and words made the burly new student a little angry. He waved his already adult-sized palm and directly swept the ice melon on the nearby table to the ground. Pieces of artful light blue fruits fell to the ground, stained with dust. The juice of the fruit soaked the dry tiles into a dark color, and the sweet and greasy scent attracted a large area of ants to nibble on. Upon seeing this scene, Jiang Ming was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but sigh. When I went out, Lao Nye said to me to try to restrain myself and not fight too much. But now it seems that there are still quite a few foolish forks like you in this world. Do you dare to curse? The burly new student had not finished speaking yet, but his mouth seemed to be blocked by something, unable to say a word. At the same time, his eyes widened at some point. Needless to say, not only do I dare to scold you, but I also dare to hit you. Jiang Ming's tone remained calm, but his right hand had already clenched its fist and hit the burly newborn's belly, which was also the reason why he widened his eyes. As he spoke, Jiang Ming withdrew his fist and lifted the burly new student who was 1 block larger than him with one hand, slamming him hard onto the floor. Dude, didn't your family tell you before going out? Keep a low profile outside. Speaking, Jiang Ming grabbed this guy's hair, lifted his head, and then patted him again. This one is very heavy. I was so heavy that even the floor was mercilessly hurt by this guy's head, and my heart was so painful that it cracked several cracks. The other freshmen passing by were all dumbfounded by this scene. Family members, who understands? I witnessed a campus violence at the beginning of the school year, can this school still stay? The expression of the dormitory manager on the side did not change much, only 2 white eyebrows furrowed. Jiang Ming brought up the person again, but the dormitory manager thought he was going to smash it again and was ready to intervene. But Jiang Ming did not continue to fight. Instead, he turned around and came to the bottom of the big maple tree, holding a burly new student with a fierce face, blood flowing from his nostrils, and a large red mark on his forehead. Jiang Ming lightly tapped his finger and a hemp rope appeared in his hand. A few minutes later, the burly new student with a swollen head hugged the big maple tree back to back, inseparable. After finishing all of this, Jiang Ming went upstairs to grab a broom and a mop, swept the rotten ice melons that had fallen to the ground into the trash can, and continued to lie down next to the dormitory manager. He took out the book he had just read and started reading it as if nothing had happened. The anger on your body is a bit heavy. The dormitory manager lay on the lounge chair, not looking at Jiang Ming, but his voice came leisurely. Are you angry? Hee, get used to it. Jiang Ming murmured with a distant gaze, then continued reading. He asked softly while reading a book. Old man, I thought you were just going to stop me. Mr. Su Guan shook his head slightly and said in a deep voice. The freshmen at Shrek College are geniuses from various empires. Some of these people are used to arrogance, so it's not bad to teach them a lesson. However, you're getting a bit heavy on them. Jiang Ming's face remained calm as he reached out to the next page of the book. This is quite serious, it's just a minor injury. It's not a muscle or bone injury, it's just a scratch and bleeding. Upon hearing this, the corner of the dormitory manager's mouth twitched slightly. This kid is really not a good person. When Jiang Ming just took action, he saw everything in his eyes and didn't use soul power. With only physical strength and some skills, he instantly made the opponent lose their combat power. You should know that those who can register for Shrek Academy are at least level 15 or above soul masters. It seems that the freshmen of this generation will have bad luck. Time passed slowly, and when the sky was dim, Jiang Ming put away the table and recliner, bid farewell to the dormitory manager, and casually put down the burly new student who had been stuck on the tree for over an hour. He then went upstairs and returned to the dormitory. "Well, the air smells much better." Jiang Ming nodded, took out a small incense burner, and lit the spices inside. Wisps of green smoke rise, accompanied by a refreshing fragrance, unconsciously calming one's mood. Jiang Ming closed the window to prevent insects such as mosquitoes and flies from flying in, and also to prevent the smell of spices from escaping from the incense burner. "My roommate hasn't come yet, let's go eat first. I don't know what the Shrek Academy cafeteria looks like, so I can't have any shaking hands too." Jiang Ming muttered, closing the dormitory door and walking towards the cafeteria behind the dormitory area. When chatting with the dormitory master this afternoon, he asked about the location of the cafeteria and also asked about other things about the academy. He also read 2 chapters introducing different types of core arrays of soul-guided shells and gained a lot. The environment of the cafeteria is much better than that of the dormitory building, but there is one thing that Jiang Ming doesn't understand. There are actually no tables and chairs in the cafeteria, and we can't take the food out yet. This is simply unbearable. Fortunately, the cafeteria lady's hands were relatively stable and did not experience any shaking. Otherwise, if more than half of the soul beast meat that Jiang Ming spent 3 gold soul coins on was shaken off, he would be so angry that he could use soul-guided shells to blow up the cafeteria. As for the situation of not sitting during meals, it is still easy for Jiang Ming to solve. Take out the folding table with ice melon in the afternoon, and put on another chair to perfectly solve it. Just because the cafeteria is so poor that you can't afford to buy tables and chairs, and you have to prepare it yourself, why is Shrek College even more dilapidated than it was 10,000 years ago? Can I put the plate here?" A voice that sounded both cold and shy sounded in his ear. Jiang Ming, who was buried in eating meat, looked up and saw a cute and delicate face. Jiang Ming has an impression of this face. When he came over this afternoon, this guy was still sitting in the carriage and peeking at himself. "Put it on, do you want a stool?" Jiang Ming said while chewing on the chewy iron-armored beef in his mouth. Whether or not to say, this dish is a bit expensive, but the taste is indeed delicious. And because it is soul beast meat with sufficient energy, there is a warm and comfortable feeling after eating it. Ling Luochen placed the plate on Jiang Ming's table and whispered. "Yes, thank you." Jiang Ming waved his hand and a stool appeared in front of Ling Luochen, and then he left her alone. Jiang Ming has a good habit of not saying anything about food or sleeping. Quickly, Jiang Ming finished this valuable dinner, put down the plate, returned to the table, and watched Ling Luochen eat. "You, what are you looking at me for?" Ling Luochen felt Jiang Ming's gaze and his movement stopped. The rice in the spoon was suspended in mid-air, and his heart couldn't help but beat rapidly. His cold and snow-white pretty face was stained with 2 red halos. "Wait for you to finish eating and collect the table." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Abnormal Martial Soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Abnormal Martial Soul. After Jiang Ming said the words to wait for her to finish her meal and finish the table, Ling Luochen's face changed from 2 blushes to a big red face, even her sparkling earlobes turned red. She hurriedly finished the food on the plate and lowered her head to pick it up. At the next moment, Jiang Ming immediately put away the table and chairs and strode towards the outside of the cafeteria. Ling Luochen was stunned when he saw Jiang Ming leaving without saying a word, and quickly said, "My name is Ling Luochen, what's your name?" "Jiang Ming." Jiang Ming waved his hand and his voice reached Ling Luochen's ears. He had already left the cafeteria. Returning to the dormitory, the room was already filled with a fresh smell. The next bed is still quiet, and the roommate hasn't come yet. Currently, he is the only one. Jiang Ming climbed onto his bed, sat cross-legged, and began to meditate. This is the plan he made for himself. Learn knowledge about soul guides during the day, meditate at night, and cultivate soul power. In theory, it is difficult for him to reach the height of Soul Lord in this way of cultivation at this age, but Jiang Ming is not only a Soul Lord now, but also a Soul Lord with 2,000-year soul rings. All of this is actually directly related to his other martial soul. Yes, another martial soul. Besides the martial soul of the heart, Jiang Ming also has another martial soul. He is a twin martial soul. Accompanied by Jiang Ming's meditation, his other martial soul also quietly appeared. That is a book that looks very heavy, with mysterious patterns on its quaint shell, forming a very dazzling pattern. With the appearance of books, 3 purple soul rings appeared beside Jiang Ming, shining brightly. Yes, 3 purple soul rings. Jiang Ming's other martial soul also has a soul ring, which is 3 purple millennium soul rings. The book quietly opened, and the content on the first page appeared. That is a small elf-like creature, with a yellow body and a red scarf around its neck. Its white face has a pair of blue-green eyes, making it look very cute. Suddenly, the little elf on the first page flew out of the book and, after taking a glance at Jiang Ming, flew directly to a purple soul ring next to him, posing in the same posture as Jiang Ming, and even began to meditate and practice. Quickly, the book opened the second page. On the second page, there is also a little elf, covered in grayish-blue, with 6 big ears, and carrying a sword almost as tall as it on its back. Like the elf on the previous page, it also flew out of the book and sat on a purple soul ring for meditation practice. Immediately after, the book flipped to the third page, and Jiang Ming's 3 soul rings also appeared. The elf on this page is a little one covered in ice blue, with a long ice cone on his forehead. Like the previous 2 elves, it flew onto a purple soul ring and meditated for cultivation. This is why Jiang Ming has devoted most of his energy to the research of soul guides, and his soul power can still improve so quickly. His second martial soul is an elf guidebook. At first, Jiang Ming didn't feel anything special about this martial soul. Many summoning soul masters have similar martial souls, and they can summon soul beasts from books to engage in battles. The number and strength of summoned soul beasts vary depending on the strength of the soul master. Jiang Ming thought his martial soul was similar, but only when his soul power reached level 10 did he realize the uniqueness of this martial soul. This martial soul does not need to hunt soul beasts to obtain soul rings when reaching the threshold of level 10. When it reaches its level, it can generate a soul ring on its own. And unseal one elf from the book. More importantly, the unsealed elf was able to meditate and cultivate with him. And the lifespan of soul rings will also increase with the achievements of elf cultivation. At the beginning, the first soul ring of this martial soul was a white 10-year soul ring. More importantly, these elves can accelerate their cultivation speed while practicing. If 3 elves practice at the same time now, the increase they bring to Jiang Ming is almost twice that of normal cultivation. Double the cultivation speed. Still at the golden age of 12 for cultivation. With this martial soul, coupled with his previous diligent cultivation, although Jiang Ming's focus has been on researching soul guides in the past 2 years, his current soul power is still as high as level 38. His first martial soul and second soul ring were from the millennium, which is also due to the increase in this martial soul. Under the impact of the soul power of the millennium soul ring, his soul power was suddenly upgraded by 2 levels. Terrifying. Silent all night, when Jiang Ming finished his meditation, the first ray of sunlight in the morning had already spilled into the room through the window. Another beautiful day. Jiang Ming stretched lazily, put away his martial soul, and began to wash up. After a night of meditation, with the assistance of special spices, Jiang Ming didn't feel tired, but instead looked refreshed. After washing up, Jiang Ming plans to go for a few dozen laps on Shrek Square in the morning. Under the big maple tree, the master of the dormitory still lay there, as if he had never moved. "Good morning, old man." Jiang Ming walked over and greeted the dormitory manager, who nodded slightly in response. Shrek Square is not too big, about 300 meters down in a circle, shorter than the playground runway of Jiang Ming's previous life. After fidgeting around for a while, Jiang Ming started his morning run. 300 meters per lap, Jiang Ming set a goal for himself to complete 100 laps. It may sound like 100 laps, but for Jiang Ming, it's not a big deal. His first martial soul is the golden heart, and the heart is an organ that can drive blood throughout the body. Since awakening this martial soul, in the past 6 years, Jiang Ming's physical strength has been strengthened countless times by this heart. In terms of physical strength alone, he is already comparable to the Four-Ring Soul sect, which possesses top-notch beast martial souls. At his running speed, 300 meters is half a minute. 100 laps, which is less than an hour, this intensity of morning running is stress-free. During the morning run, students were already active at Shrek Square. However, most of the students participating in these activities do not have morning runs, and they are more willing to spend this time practicing meditation. Soul Master, enhancing soul power is the most direct way to enhance strength. After 100 laps, Jiang Ming went to the canteen to buy some steamed buns and a cup of soybean milk. The taste is good and the price is relatively reasonable. After breakfast, Jiang Ming returned to the dormitory and took a shower, then continued to enjoy the tranquility of time with the dormitory manager under the big maple tree. Today is also the registration time, so there is no need for classes. Jiang Ming also has no chance to go to the Soul Guidance Department to take classes, so he can only continue reading books about soul guidance. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Friends wearing key Hengs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Friends wearing key Hengs, are you very interested in soul guides? Jiang Ming put down the book in his hand and looked at the dormitory manager. This is the first time that Mr. Su Guan has taken the initiative to ask him a question, and Jiang Ming said softly. Well, I'm really interested in soul guides. Do you have any research on soul guides, old man? Teach me. Jiang Ming asked with some anticipation. He had already confirmed that the old man who appeared to be buried in the soil with only his head exposed was a sweeping monk. If this old man had any research on soul guides, he would be at least a level 7 or even 8 soul mentor. As for Jiang Ming's understanding before coming to level 9, there is no level 9 soul master in the Soul Guidance Department of Shrek College. Not only in the Soul Guidance Department of Shrek Academy, but also in the Sun and Moon Empire, there are very few 9th level soul mentors on the entire Douluo continent. It can almost be said that there is none. However, level 7 is also acceptable, teaching him is safe and sufficient. Looking at the hopeful gaze in Jiang Ming's eyes, the dormitory manager shook his head and said. I can use soul guides, but I haven't studied the production of soul guides, so I can't teach you. Upon hearing this, the hopeful expression in Jiang Ming's eyes faded, but he was not too disappointed either. After all, in a few days, he will be able to go to the Soul Guidance Department to take classes, and he will definitely find a powerful soul mentor who can teach him. Little one, I really don't know how to make soul guides, nor can I teach you, but I can introduce someone to you. The dormitory manager looked at Jiang Ming, and a smile appeared on his old face. Who is it? Jiang Ming leaned his ear and looked at the dormitory manager. Fan Yu, he's good at playing soul guides, but he can teach you. The dormitory manager slowly spoke out a name. Fan Yu. Jiang Ming secretly remembered this name in his heart. The person recommended by the dormitory master must be a powerful soul mentor. Remember, thank you. Leisure time is always very short, and in the blink of an eye, a morning has passed. Jiang Ming stood up, put away the lounge chair, and looked at the dormitory manager. Old man, I'm going to have lunch first. Let's continue chatting in the afternoon. After speaking, Jiang Ming strode towards the cafeteria. But just as he took a few steps, Jiang Ming seemed to have remembered something and returned to the side of the dormitory manager. Jiang Ming squatted down next to the recliner of the dormitory manager and complained somewhat. "Old man, I know you must be a senior executive at Shrek College. Could you please report to the relevant department that this cafeteria doesn't have tables and chairs for meals, and it's not allowed to take out the food? It's too inconvenient." Of course, this is not a big deal for Jiang Ming. After all, there are tables and chairs in his storage Seoul guide, and he just doesn't want to take his own tables and chairs every time. It's troublesome to clean the table after dinner. Last time the little girl with blue hair left several grains of rice on his table while eating. Mr. Su Guan clearly didn't expect Jiang Ming to say this to him. He opened his mouth slightly and said somewhat awkwardly, "I'm not in charge of this, and I can't help either." Although Mr. Dormitory is a big shot in Shrek Academy, he has never been exposed to this type of logistics management before. It doesn't seem good to specifically talk about it in the Sea God Pavilion. Well, that's okay. After class, I'll go report to the dean. Old man, I'll leave first. Jiang Ming nodded and went to the cafeteria to cook. I didn't meet the little girl who rubbed the tables and chairs from last night today, but there were quite a few more people in the cafeteria. Today is the last day for new students to register, and most of them have already done so. It's normal to have too many people. Walking to the cafeteria window, Jiang Ming originally wanted to have some good food like yesterday, but took out the bag containing the money and glanced at it. After some calculation in his heart, he still gave up his extravagant life of eating big fish and meat. There are still hundreds of gold Seoul coins in the wallet, as well as pocket money for hundreds of gold Seoul coins quietly given by Lady Nye. There must be enough for dinner. But his money doesn't just have to be used for food. Learning Seoul guides, whether it's buying materials for practice or other aspects, is very expensive. Especially since he is still researching disposable Seoul guided shells, this is a sales hole. After simply ordering 2 dishes, 1 meat and 1 vegetable, and adding 3 times the amount of white rice, Jiang Ming took out his own table and chairs again. As the saying goes, have a good breakfast, have enough lunch, and eat less dinner. Jiang Ming has another heart martial soul, and his body requires a lot of energy to strengthen, which is reflected to a certain extent in his appetite. Yesterday I ate soul beast meat, even though it wasn't much, the energy was very abundant and full. Now, a meal with a silver soul coin cannot be compared to a few soul beasts with a few gold soul coins. The only way is to focus energy intake on white rice. The taste is not bad, but it contains a bit less energy. Jiang Ming muttered and took a big bite of rice into his mouth. It seems that we need to hurry up and find a way to make money, otherwise our daily nutrition won't keep up. Jiang Ming is not someone who will feel wronged, and he also knows that it is not advisable to rely on saving money to make a living. He must earn money. However, school is about to start soon. During the day, he has to take martial soul classes, go to soul guidance classes, and meditate at night. How can he make money? Thinking about it, the dishes on the plate were quickly eaten. It has been proven that in a state of silence, eating can be done very quickly. As soon as the plate was placed and the tables and chairs were put away, Jiang Ming returned to the big maple tree. Just this time, he didn't continue reading, but instead looked up at the sky with his eyes furrowed in thought. Upon seeing this, the dormitory manager slightly curled his lips and chuckled lightly. At a young age, where did so many troubles come from? Jiang Ming pondered for the whole afternoon, thinking of dozens of ways to make money, but then denied it for the whole afternoon. Some methods may seem feasible, but they are difficult to implement. Some methods are simple and rough, but they are easy to violate school rules and cannot flow smoothly. And there are also some ways that require relationships. When he was in Qingshui City before, his biggest relationship was with him, but at Shrek College, apart from the dormitory master around him, he didn't seem to know anyone of high status. Oh, making money is really troublesome. Unconsciously, night falls again. Jiang Ming bid farewell to the dormitory manager, returned to the dormitory, lit the spices in the small incense burner, and prepared to meditate. However, as soon as Jiang Ming went to bed and sat down cross-legged, the dormitory door was opened. A person with short golden hair and a handsome appearance walked in. "Is this a roommate? I came late enough. I will start classes tomorrow and only arrive tonight." Jiang Ming muttered to himself for a moment, then got out of bed and looked at his roommate. "Hello, I am Dai Tsai-heng." After the other party put down their luggage, they reached out and greeted Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming reached out and shook hands, introducing himself. Jiang Ming. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Big Brother, do you want this volume? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Big Brother, do you want this volume? The first meeting with roommates was quite harmonious. After introducing their names to each other, Dai Zhuhan went to pack his luggage. Jiang Ming saw that he also had a soul guide, which was a ring worn on his finger, and he knew at a glance that it was worth a lot. "It seems that my roommate is also a wealthy second-generation." Jiang Ming squinted his eyes, thinking carefully in his heart. In fact, people who can register for Shrek Academy are basically from good families. After all, the cultivation of soul masters is quite expensive. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that there are super geniuses with innate soul power who rely on talent to smooth out the gap in family background. Such a genius would be recommended by the main cities of various empires to enter Shrek Academy. When Jiang Ming looked at Dai Tsai-heng was also observing Jiang Ming. He summarized the following points. Firstly, he looks very handsome. And with an extraordinary temperament, one can tell at a glance that it's not just a simple product. Secondly, the family is well off. As soon as he entered the door, he smelled the fragrant scent permeating the dormitory, which was valuable agarwood. Even if he was the eldest son of the White Tiger Duke's family, he couldn't bear to use this spice in a place like the dormitory. Thirdly, you have a decent temper. As the eldest son of the White Tiger Duke's family, although he is still young, many people have seen him. This Jiang Ming doesn't have the arrogance of other freshmen, he looks very easygoing. To sum up these 3 points, Dai Tsai-heng has almost confirmed that Jiang Ming is a relatively easygoing person. But he never imagined that at this moment, Jiang Ming was thinking about how to get some money from him. He has only been at Shrek College for a day, and it is unrealistic for him to establish a funding chain that can flow smoothly in a short period of time. But if we do some short-term funding, we do have a head start. You should know that the registration for new students at Shrek College has almost ended now. At least 80% of the hundreds of freshmen are from wealthy families. These people are not short of money. Of course, Jiang Ming wouldn't go to grab money either, as it would violate school rules, and he's not that bad either. After packing his luggage, Dai Tsai-heng went to bed and sat cross-legged, beginning his meditation practice. As the eldest son of the White Tiger Duke's family, he must work hard so as not to disappoint the expectations of his family. Upon seeing this, Jiang Ming looked at Dai Tsai-heng and then at the small incense burner emitting fine smoke beside him, with a hint of a smile on his lips. He rolled over to bed and began to meditate and practice. As for the discovery of the secret of the martial soul, Jiang Ming is not very worried. His first martial soul belongs to the weapon martial soul, which he uses every time he cultivates. It is impossible to hide this thing in itself, and the soul ring is the same. It is always used during battles and cannot be hidden. It's better to show it directly than to hide it in a hesitant manner. Anyway, he didn't say anything, and no one knew that his martial soul could still help him cultivate. In the dormitory, accompanied by the fragrant scent of agarwood, neither of them slept, but meditated and practiced in bed. When Jiang Ming's Book of Elves and Martial Souls came out, the chi machine of soul power pulled Dai Tsai-heng open his eyes. Just as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw 3 dazzling purple Millennium Soul Rings. 3 Millennium Soul Rings. It's fake, right? Dai Jianheng blinked hard and even reached out to wipe his eyes, but the 3 purple Millennium Soul Rings still shone so brightly. Really, it's really 3 Millennium Soul Rings. Dai Zieheng caught it directly with flax, swallowing saliva continuously in his throat. Unbelievable. As the eldest son of the White Tiger Duke's family, his resources and knowledge are also among the top among his peers. But 3 Millennium Soul Rings. This is really challenging to understand. Soul Lord is not a problem, after all, he himself is also one. But you 3 Millennium Soul Rings. Dai Jianheng instantly began to doubt his level of genius, and compared to the 3 purple Millennium Soul Rings, his 2 yellow and 1 purple soul rings looked somewhat shabby. No way. We can't be influenced by him. Dai Jianheng pinched his thigh fiercely, and the instant pain brought him back to his senses. This is Shrek Academy, the 3-ring Soul Lord, or the 3,000-year Soul Rings. Dai Jianheng sighed and calmed down the storm in his heart, quickly entering a state of cultivation. Fortunately, with the assistance of Agarwood, Dai Zieheng quickly entered a meditative state and began practicing. There was nothing to say all night, but still a ray of morning sunshine fell into the room, and Jiang Ming woke up. And Dai Zieheng, who was on the opposite bed, also finished his cultivation. His gaze towards Jiang Ming was like that of a monster. Why are your 3 soul rings all purple Millennium Soul Rings? Dai Jianheng couldn't help but ask curiously. The 3 purple Millennium Soul Rings I saw last night were really shocking to him. Even with the assistance of Agarwood, it took him a long time to calm down. This is a secret. Jiang Ming smiled, then jumped out of bed and greeted Dai Zhuheng. Are you going to have breakfast? There are still a few hours left for class. Dai Xianheng suppressed his curiosity. As the eldest son of the White Tiger Duke's family, he knew that these 3 soul rings were all from the 1000 grade level, and it was definitely a secret that would not be passed down. Just now, he couldn't help but ask curiously. But since Jiang Ming said it was a secret, he naturally wouldn't ask further. Okay, together. After washing up, the 2 of them went downstairs to the cafeteria. On the way, Jiang Ming also greeted the dormitory manager under the big maple tree. After breakfast, Jiang Ming followed his habit and went for a morning run at Shrek Square. Dai Zieheng saw Jiang Mingchen running and also started running with him. Unfortunately, this guy doesn't have much endurance. Jiang Ming finished 100 laps, but this guy only ran a little over half. After finishing their morning run, Jiang Ming and Dai Zieheng went back to their dormitories, simply rinsed them with water, changed into white school uniforms, and walked towards the teaching building full of energy. Today is the first day of school, I don't know what fun things will happen. The gate of the white teaching building has been opened, and a group of new students wearing white school uniforms rushed in. The left chest of the school uniform has a green monster symbol symbolizing Shrek College. Jiang Ming and Dai Zieheng found a teacher in the first room on the first floor, with a class written on it. This is their class. When the 2 of them entered the classroom, there were still many vacant seats. They arrived earlier and casually found 2 vacant seats before sitting down. Then, Jiang Ming took out a book on the construction of soul-guided shells and read it carefully. This made Dai Zieheng momentarily stunned and somewhat difficult to understand. A soul master genius with 3 soul rings, all 3 of which are purple Millennium Soul Rings, actually reading a book on soul guides. Is this just the soul master soul guide grabbing with both hands? Both hands must be hard. Big brother, do you want this role? I, the Duke of the White Tiger, am not as involved as you, even the eldest young master. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Dare not fight back after being beaten, useless. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Dare not fight back after being beaten, useless. At this moment, Dai Zieheng felt somewhat overwhelmed in his heart. Before yesterday, he believed that his talent was extremely good and that he was able to achieve the cultivation of the 3rd ring Soul Lord at the age of 12. He was already one of the top beings among his peers. But after seeing Jiang Ming, his confidence was repeatedly undermined. The same three-ring Soul Lord, they have 3 purple Millennium Soul Rings. At the age of 12, while practicing Soul Masters, he also studies Soul Guides. The gap between people is really huge. Dai Ziheng silently set his goal in his heart, and he must study hard and practice hard next. Although I definitely can't catch up with this pervert around me, I can't leave too much behind. He looked at the other students in the classroom, most of whom were chatting. A beautiful girl is surrounded by a group of boys, while he and Jiang Ming are surrounded by a group of girls. At the age of 12, although adulthood on Douluo continent is relatively early, there are not many youthful hormones at this age, and everyone is only attracted to beautiful things. After observing for a while, Dai Ziheng noticed that there were 2 different gazes looking at him. To be precise, it's looking towards Jiang Ming beside me. One of the gazes was a beautiful girl with blue hair. This girl looks a bit cold, and the boys don't dare to get close. And another gaze came from a very burly boy. The boy's gaze seemed to conceal anger, mixed with fear, and his gaze was very strange. Dai Ziheng glanced at Jiang Ming, who was completely oblivious to everything around him and focused solely on reading Soul Guides, and secretly clicked his tongue. The new student has only been in school for 2 days, so this guy seems to have done some incredible things. After a few minutes, the classroom bell rang and it was time for class. And Jiang Ming, upon hearing the bell ring, also put down his book. In the first class, he needs to listen carefully and see what the teaching at Shrek College looks like. The bell stopped and someone walked into the classroom door. After seeing this person, the boys in the class all widened their eyes. Ah, beautiful woman. Our homeroom teacher is actually a beautiful woman. She looks so gentle, it seems her class will be very relaxed. The boys and girls in the classroom were whispering and curious about this beautiful-looking homeroom teacher. Quickly, the beautiful-looking homeroom teacher walked up to the podium and scanned the students in the classroom, desperately trying to show a dignified posture. But unfortunately, her appearance was too gentle and beautiful, to the extent that her behavior, which desperately wanted to show her dignity, could even be described as cute. Seeing that the students in the classroom were not intimidated by herself, and even giggled, Zhou felt exhausted. She became a teacher for the first time this year, but she didn't expect that the most troublesome thing was not teaching, but her face. My name is Zhou, and I am your homeroom teacher. Zhou perked up and began to introduce herself. Looking at the still cheerful atmosphere in the classroom, Zhou frowned and thought of a solution. She lowered her voice, trying to present a more serious or even stern tone. I'm not sure how many of you can persevere at Shrek College, but I want to tell you, don't have a lucky mentality in this class, trash and fools will definitely be eliminated. As soon as these words were spoken, the originally giggling freshmen suddenly changed their attitudes. You should know that being able to come to Shrek Academy is an absolute genius among their peers. And now on the first day of school, the teacher calls them garbage and fools. How can proud geniuses accept this? Effective. Zhou felt a sense of joy in her heart. Although her methods were a bit extreme, she still adjusted the atmosphere of the classroom to some extent, which was beneficial for the subsequent teaching. This teacher, upon hearing these words, Jiang Ming in his seat was stunned. His homeroom teacher had something to do with him. He looked at the podium, wanting to see what other operations the class teacher had. On the podium, Zhou cleared her throat, and lowering her voice put a considerable pressure on her voice. She looked at the students and the teacher with sharp eyes. Have you ever had a fight during the days when you registered? The whole class was shocked, got into a fight. Fighting on the first day of school. What kind of fierce person is that? Some people, upon hearing these words, instinctively turned to Jiang Ming in the middle of the classroom and his burly classmates who were far away. The freshmen all live in the same dormitory building. On the first day of registration, Jiang Ming beat up the burly guy and tied him to a tree all afternoon. Many people saw him. Jiang Ming raised his eyebrows, collected the book in his hand, and slowly stood up. And seeing Jiang Ming stand up, the classmates in the class were once again shocked. Especially for the students who only completed their registration yesterday and missed the good show, they all looked at Jiang Ming in surprise. And the students who knew Jiang Ming was fighting were also somewhat surprised. Even if it was a real fight during the first lesson of school, it shouldn't be admitted. What if the teacher is fired directly? Hey, you really got into a fight. Dai Ziheng saw Jiang Ming stand up with a look of shock on his face. No, even if you really fight, don't stand up. What if the teacher fires you directly? After a moment of shock, Dai Ziheng quickly pulled Jiang Ming and wanted him to sit down. Just one, who did you hit? Zhou Yi looked at Jiang Ming with beautiful eyes, feeling somewhat disappointed. Jiang Ming ignored Dai Ziheng's tugs and reached out to point to a burly boy in the back of the classroom. The boy pointed at was startled and quickly waved his hand, saying, "Teacher, I didn't fight him. He did it, and I didn't even fight back." Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yimei narrowed her eyes slightly and then shouted loudly. "As a new student, you dare not fight back even after being beaten by him. You useless." The burly boy was stunned. He had said this to get rid of himself, but to his surprise, the homeroom teacher didn't follow the routine and even scolded him. "No, teacher, I." The burly man wanted to say something more, but Zhou Yi interrupted his speech directly. "You, go out and run 100 laps around Shrek Square. If you can't finish, you don't need to stay at Shrek Academy anymore." The burly boy suddenly widened his eyes. It was clear that he was the one being bullied. How could he have hit someone without punishment, but this victim wanted to run circles? "Teacher, this is not fair." The burly boy protested. Zhou Yi raised her eyebrows and leaned against her incredibly gentle face, saying word by word. "Yao Haoshuan, I'll count 3 times and drop out of school instead of running. 3. 2. Before he could shout out, Yao Haoshuan quickly ran out of the classroom and went to Shrek Square for a lap. With his strength, it's not difficult to run 100 laps in Shrek Square. If he gets dropped out of school because of this, his family will scold him to death. End of this chapter.